Set. Let's call this meeting to order. This meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners is being broadcast at RMLD's offices at 230 Ash Street, Reading, Massachusetts. Live broadcasts are only available in Reading due to technology constraints. This meeting is being videotaped for distribution to the community television stations in North Reading, Wilmington, and Lynnfield. Mr. Norton, glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you,
Anything for us at this time?
Huh?
Anything for us at this time?
I will reserve my statement for later on, if you don't mind.
It's always your privilege, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge any public officials that might be with us this evening.
My name is Michael Frisco from the Board of Selectmen in North Reading.
Michael, nice welcome.
Sean Delaney, also from the North Reading Board of Selectmen.
Steve O'Leary, North Reading Board of Selectmen.
Bob Messeri, Chairman of the North Reading Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome.
Jeff Buell, North Reading Board of Selectmen.
Welcome as well. I guess before we get into our formal agenda, I guess I will open this meeting up to any comments that the public might wish to make, and I guess I'm going to extend the courtesy of the first opportunity to our elected officials if they wish to make any comments.
They need to come up to the mic, too.
You might need to come up to the mic here and speak so they can get you on camera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our entire board is here concerned about a decision that I'm not clear as to whether it's been voted or not regarding the sale or termination of the RECs. And I think in part this is the first that we heard about it today via some emails that we received. And so there's a concern over not having some input. And two, just getting clarification of the pros and cons of either electing to, the term is to allow the RECs to expire or to sell them. So I guess I'm posing it as a question.
Okay. I mean, we have had a lot of debate on this topic, and so I mean, a complete answer to your question might quite frankly take a while, which we can do. I guess I do have to note that these certificates are regenerated every year. So whatever the outcome of our last vote can always be revisited in future years. So it isn't a irrevocable decision for the rest of our lives. I mean, obviously, this board votes on a lot of things. We buy a lot of stuff, quite frankly. And so we take votes like that. I'm not sure how much detail you'd like me to get. I mean, would you like to start? I mean, is that?
Well, it's my understanding, reading through the documentation that I haven't fully digested, is that first of all, a municipality has no requirements to report any green energy efforts. Is that correct?
In Massachusetts, municipal electric companies like the RMLD are not subject to a mandatory renewable portfolio standard, which the investor-owned utilities like National Grid and NSTAR are subject to such a standard. However, it's not unusual for municipalities to add renewable resources and green energy to their power supply portfolios, even if there's no requirement. So you are correct. We didn't have to buy the renewable energy in the first place. At the time, the board felt it was a responsible thing to do, and so we bought the output of two renewable projects, if you will. One was a hydro project and one was a biomass-fired cogeneration plant.
That
Can I
part I
clarify?
get, so,
I'm sorry, Gina, go right ahead.
We do have to report, though. We've submitted a report on our power mix. So we are reporting, but we don't have a standard imposed at this point in time.
so we get this benefit in the form of a certificate or a RAC, and I gather why there's a market for them is that some of the larger utilities probably haven't met those goals, and therefore they can purchase these RECs, as
Well,
if it was,
there is a secondary market for these devices because sometimes it's a less expensive way to comply with the law. And so right now, rec prices are fairly low because at least for 2012, there is an excess of supply over demand. And you may or may not recall, but the RMLD had a green choice program, still does, where you could elect to have a portion of your personal electric supply come from renewable sources. And the way the RMLD bought that renewable energy was to buy RECs.
so what I'm trying to understand is, you have these RECs, there's no requirement that you've met any goals. In the process of selling them, what's the downside of that? I'm trying to understand that.
Well, you have probably struck on the key issue of difference here. And, when we held our meeting in December, members of the public came and spoke, and I think 4 people spoke, and there were 2 for and 2 against. And the Citizens Advisory Board took a vote, and it was 4 for keeping the RECs and 1 for retiring them. And we took a vote, it was 3-2. So it's clearly a divided issue. The pros, if you will, and I'll just give you my opinion. By the way, I will allow any other board member who may not agree with everything I'm about to say, because it is a divided issue, to have their say as well. But I'll give you my view and why I voted the way I did. In that,
Excuse me one second. I'm not so much interested in why the board voted one way or the other from an opinion point of view. I'm more interested in trying to understand what the downside is.
the downside,
Opinion point of view, but how does that impact Reading Electric?
if we sell the RECs, we will have overpaid for power supply. And so, the board felt that having a portion of our power supply, albeit a small portion, from renewable sources, it's acknowledged, generally universally acknowledged, that renewable energy at this point in time costs more than conventional power supplies. Natural gas prices are at historic lows. And so just buying conventional power from ISO New England, which is what we do a lot of, admittedly, it's a lot cheaper than buying renewable energy, but, those sources emit. They emit pollutants and they emit greenhouse gases. So the advantage of having some renewable energy in your portfolio is you're not contributing to that as much as if you had 100% conventional power supplies. So I suppose in a way you could say it was a bad idea to buy these projects in the first place, but the board felt at the time that having some renewable, being environmentally responsible, is a good idea. And so that's the pro of keeping them.
I'm still
Hang on.
still not clear in my mind is, so we've paid more for electricity. I understand that. And as a result, we've got some kind of certificate that says that we have this. Now, if we sell it, what's the financial transaction that negates or makes it more expensive for us?
Dick Massey.
Well, actually, Bob had his hand up first, so
Okay.
Mary Ellen, I'm gonna
Yeah, that's fine.
give Bob a chance to say something, and then you can. Bob, did you wanna add something?
Yes. We get an energy report each month, and the report for December was just here tonight. Swift River Projects, which is the hydro from Table 4, it's 9.58 cents per kilowatt hour. Before the meeting, I talked to a member of the Energy Services Department of the Light Department, and she told me that the RECs might reduce that as much as 3 cents. So that would bring it down to 6.58 cents. And scanning the list for Constellation and JP Morgan, they are cheaper, but every other energy source, Millstone Nuclear Reactor, Seabrook Nuclear Reactor, New York Power Authority is also lower. So it turns out if we did sell the RECs, that price would come in to be lower than most of the other power supplies. So that would be in consonance with our policy number 19, which says the Reading Light Department will try to have rates lower than the investor-owned utilities, plus being lower than all the adjacent municipals, which we are not. Peabody typically is lower. But in light of policy 19, which is a policy that stood the test of time, that says, board, we want to try to have low rates. And if we sold the RECs, the Swift River projects would come in lower than the nuclear reactors, which are thought to be cheap, and also some of those that we have bought on the open market. So that would be the effect.
Mary Ellen?
I just want to say that from my point of view, the downside, there's two things. One, the downside of selling the RECs is it's bundled power, so it's your energy and you buy the attributes of green or renewable power. So if you break that apart and sell off the RECs, you are selling off all your ability to say that you have renewable, green, or sustainable power in your power supply portfolio. The other thing, I feel it positions the RMLD well for the future in terms of whether or not an RPS standard were imposed on the municipal utilities. We have excellent contracts, and if such a thing were to happen, we'd be in a good position already having the RECs, not having to go out and purchase anything, on the market. So I think those are, two reasons for keeping the RECs.
By retiring the RECs, do we have, is there an opportunity out there to get federal funding or grants and not having them, it being in the way of getting those grants?
No.
No?
No.
It has nothing to do with that.
No. There are no federal grants associated with RECs per se. A REC is 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy produced by a qualifying generation technology that's renewable.
Mm-hmm.
Hydro, wind, biomass, solar. So it really has nothing to do with federal grants. There are federal grants available for homeowners who want to add solar panels to their roofs, for example, or if you wanted to put one on the roof of the North Reading High School, you could probably qualify for a grant. But once you do that, whatever kilowatt hours that solar facility produces, for every 1,000 of them, they get 1 rec.
I see.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Bill?
Okay, now since we're into the topic, I also want to acknowledge that we've had many letters, many communications, emails that have come in.
Well, actually, I'm gonna ask you to hold off on that to make sure we answer this gentleman's questions, and then we'll get into that, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Well,
Take this somewhat of an,
you know,
I'm gonna try and make this as
okay,
orderly as I can.
then I will focus on that. I don't see a downside. We are actually buying the power, we are supporting these projects, and I've said this before, we actually are buying these power and supporting the projects. The money's being spent. The people who are producing these powers are getting the benefit. That the producers are, we are supporting the producers of this renewable energy. So therefore, I don't see a downside to selling the RECs. I think the money is, the funds, the amount of funds is substantial. And I really think, you know, as I'm in the minority here, I was one of the two, and I really think that we should be selling these, quite truthfully.
Okay, fine,
Yep.
thanks, Phil.
Okay.
What other questions
I
would
think
we
you
like to try to answer
basically
for you?
given me enough background in terms of, you know, I haven't heard a real good reason for retiring the RECs, you know, short of saying, you know, we're buying some green energy. And, you know, based on the economy, based on the rates that our citizens are paying for electricity, I think you cited some chapter in your on your guidelines about
Policy
producing
19.
the lowest cost electricity. I would question the wisdom of the board's decision that's been made previously, and I will apologize for not being engaged in this earlier, but I don't think any of us board members heard of any of this. We're only a few miles away from this building here, and I don't believe, and John is very good about informing us about what's going on. We hadn't heard from him either, so. Those are my questions for the evening. I appreciate you taking time to listen to me and answer my questions.
Thank you for coming.
John had his hand up too.
I'm sorry, John, did you want to add something?
Yeah, let Steve, and then I,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve O'Leary, member of the Board of Selectmen. Just from a timing standpoint, I mean, this is some sort of an investment instrument. Did it have a timeline, timetable on it as far as when the call, is there a call on it now? As far
No.
as,
No, it's not an investment instrument. It's not a call option. It's not a put option. It is a way to ensure that entities like RMLD, if you want to have renewable energy in your portfolio, and you really do need these things. If you don't, okay, then we, you know, made a bad decision in buying them in buying the renewable energy in the first place. But again, I think the board felt that it was the responsible thing to do. So it's, you know, you have an electric meter. It measures the output in kilowatt hours. So you get those actual electrons, and you get the certificates that proves that they were from a renewable resource. So it's not a financial instrument per se.
Mr. Chairman, can I clarify something?
This is an open meeting, so yeah, I'm going to give everybody their
I just want to
fair
clarify
say
that
here.
what the RMLD receives is a numerical count of RECs. There's no financial amount attached to those RECs as we earn them from using the power. We paid for those RECs as part of the power contracts that we signed, which were approved by the board a year ago in January 2011, and we get a numerical count. So that's how it appears on our records, is a numerical count with no financial value
so
attached.
basically, it's a percentage of your portfolio is invested in renewable
Is
energy.
purchased from.
Purchase is in renewable energy, so whatever your total usage is, that percentage is allocated of, you're given credit for that type of usage
Yep.
coming from those sources, right?
Yes.
So it's not like you're buying it directly from here, and the electricity's being generated here, and that's where it's coming from necessarily. Right. So I guess from, again, a timing standpoint, what has precipitated the discussion of whether or not to retire them or sell them?
Well, I'm not sure I want to get into that right now, but after the decision was made to sign these power contracts, and when I say these power contracts, I mean the Swift River Hydro projects and the Concord Steam biomass cogeneration. You know, there was, I hope there was no doubt that we were buying renewable energy, which means we were buying the RECs. I always ask that question because some owners of renewable facilities will sell just the kilowatt hours and they will keep the RECs. So you have to ask yourself when you make a purchase, are you buying these things in the first place or not? We did. We asked, are we buying them? They said yes, so they're included. And it was only after that, which is a little bit of unfortunate timing, that it was suggested that we sell them. So, you know, I guess if we had had the debate beforehand, maybe we would have had a different outcome here. But I don't think there's any, at least there was no doubt in my mind that at the time we signed these, we wanted renewable projects. And so to have this plan come up after the fact, you know, it's a little bit disturbing, but we'll deal with it. We are where we are.
And so, based upon, and again, I just became somewhat familiar with the issue this morning, based upon, you know, some emails that were flying back and forth. So I too, again, apologize for not being aware, as much as I should have, I guess. But again, we didn't have any real notification as to what discussion was taking place. But in relation to the 1.5, 1.6 million, or up to $30 million over 15 years, can you clarify that for us as far as whether you hold on to them and let them retire them, I guess, or sell them? Excuse me, once you vote to retire them, as you did, is that a done deal?
No, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, and RECs are tracked on a monthly basis. So, Mr. Soley was kind enough to point out that Swift River generated 1,566 megawatt hours in the month of December. Okay, so we got 1,566 RECs for that month. If they had a value of $30 a megawatt hour, that would be $45,000. And our total power supply costs for the month are $4 million. So it's a small percentage.
The numbers that were being thrown around, though, was something to the effect of, you know, potentially $1.5 million a year value for 15 years, equating to $30 million. I guess I'm...
Right, and so if the Concord Steam project were to come online, and I don't think they're going to do this, but let's say that they were online by 2013. So we would add to that renewable purchase the amount generated by Concord Steam, and we would get those RECs, and we get them on a monthly basis. And so, you know, we could sell them. There's no doubt about that. We could sell them every month. We could sell them every year. We could revisit this every budget session. I mean, the board felt, or at least a majority of the board felt, that it would be useful and desirable to have a renewable energy policy that says some portion of our portfolio every year will come from renewable energy. And if that was a bad decision, okay, but that's what the board felt. And personally, I still feel that way.
Can I
So-
have another clarification?
Sure,
on that,
Mary Ellen, go
please?
ahead.
So Concord Steam, the second renewable project that we approved last January, isn't finished yet. So we're not receiving any power from them, and so we're not accumulating any RECs. The only RECs we get right now are from the Swift River. So that, the way that figure came in was if that were online, added and that was producing recs, which it's not, add those to the Swift River, and then look at the value of those, and each of those projects gets different types of recs valued at different values, which can fluctuate up and down depending on the market. There's no set price. So someone took a couple of figures from, I don't know, December, attached them to those recs, how much power we might get from Concord Steam, how much we're getting from Swift River, multiplied it, put it out over 15 years, and came up with that ballpark figure of $30 million.
And I believe that's over a 20-year period, so whatever it works out to be. I think when the two projects are done, I haven't checked the numbers lately, but it will add about 2% to our power supply costs for the whole system. And like I said, if you are a consumer and you're concerned about that, please call the RMLD and sign up for one of our energy conservation programs, because you'll save more than 2%.
You know, again, just based upon the correspondence, I was going back and forth, you know, leaving even a 15 or 20-year time period, $30 million, again, looking like you're leaving that on the table is very disconcerting and somewhat questionable. Now, the attempt of the board, and I know you have the past, to buy some renewable energy sources is laudable and should be done, and we should be looking at that direction. Is there any thing that would preclude you from, you know, selling these and purchasing later, or still maintaining a portion of the portfolio, and depending upon what the market is and how well the renewable energy sources are progressing, you can still maintain some sort of a policy of having a certain portion of it without leaving, whether it's $15 million or $30 million on the table?
Well, I guess I will say that I disagree with the characterization of leaving that amount of money on the table.
And that's fine, it's based on, again,
Fine. This is a public meeting, and you're entitled to your opinion, and I guess I'm entitled to mine. And I don't agree with that characterization.
okay.
But to answer your direct question, you know, do we have flexibility with these things? Sure. We looked long and hard. Energy Services Department staff will testify to this. When we asked them to go find us some renewable projects, we wanted ones that were among the lowest cost renewable that you could get. And we rejected a fair number of projects because, you know, boy, that's just too much money. That's way too high. You see the investor-owned utilities signing up for Cape Wind at $200 a megawatt hour. Well, believe me, we're not going to have any of that here, okay? And so we found two projects that we felt over the term of the contracts, and these were 15-year PPAs, power purchase agreements, that were reasonable in price for renewables. Now, they're definitely higher than conventional power supplies, but we felt that that small increment in the total system power supply cost was worth it.
And if I could just get some clarification from Mr. Pacino.
Yep.
I know he's a numbers man.
Oh, he's much more than that.
I know, he is, yeah. But, Phil, in relation to your position on it, in that you say we still would have a portion within the portfolio.
Right, I mean, we are now buying the power. So the people who are producing this power, we're supporting them. It's not like, you know, we're not supporting them. And I think, you know, this is my personal opinion now, and I do think we're leaving, you know, $1.5 million on the table. I do agree with your characterization. My friend, Mr. Hahn, who will always be my friend even after this, disagrees with that characterization. But I believe we are leaving money on the table, and that we are not, you know, when I got elected to this board, you know, I felt the responsibility to the ratepayers. And I've been here 25 years on this board. I go back to when we were on Haven Street. Vinnie remembers that, Haven Street. And I feel that, you know, very strongly, this is one of the stronger things I felt about in the last 25 years, that we are not doing, we are doing a disservice to our ratepayers at this point by not selling these recs. I feel very strongly about that. One of the strongest things I felt about in 25 years. I feel we're leaving the money on the table. Even worse, the vote basically excluded $30 million. And if you take the present value, it's like the net present value is like $23 million of that. But the motion basically took that out. I mean, my personal feeling is, and we have additional emails, we have both from the Wilmington Selectmen and the Linfield Selectmen, that they would like more information also. Same as the North Reading. We've heard from all the 3 outside towns. I believe we've heard from one of the selectmen here in Reading, that they want more information. I talked to the general manager this afternoon. I understand that the recs, the first set of recs will be retired March the 15th at this point. Am I correct in that, Vinnie?
Yeah.
March the 15th. I think we should instruct the department to hold off on that until we actually can get everybody
All right,
together from all the 3 towns
Phil-
and go
Phil,
forward.
Again, in the purpose of having an organized meeting here, we'll,
Mhm.
he asked you a question, you answered it.
And again, my follow-up was going to be exactly that, is that I would, as a respectfully request, as one member of the board, and I don't speak for everybody, you know, that you postpone action on this, on the previous action, reconsider it, postpone your action until the respective boards of each town who represent the ratepayers in each community have the requisite information to help advise you, and our advisor come back to you with what our true feelings are. Again, my initial reaction is, and sorry if you don't like the characterization, is that we're leaving a lot of money on the table. I don't like to feel that way, and again, at what cost? You know, I mean, to the extent that it's, you know, important to have renewable energy sources in your portfolio, I don't necessarily disagree. To be considered a green municipal light department, that's a wonderful thing, but not at $1.5 million a year. I'll call you green all day long. You know, to me, the green to the ratepayers is how much is coming out of the pocket. And it may be an insignificant amount of savings, but by the same token, it's still their money. It's still, I think it's important that we have enough information to come to the same conclusion that you have, rather than Mr. Pacino. And I'm not there yet, and I'm willing to listen. But I think before you take action and invest $1.5 million, I'll leave the $1.5 million investment in your portfolio there, as opposed to taking it back out and putting it towards the fuel service charge. I had a nice conversation with Mr. Cameron this morning, and I appreciate the time that he took to try and assist and fill me in a little bit. I just think the board owes it to the ratepayers, the communities, the community leaders, to be better informed before you go ahead and move ahead. So I would ask you to reconsider your action, hold off until we're in a position to weigh in on an informed basis. And I appreciate your taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you.
John, wanna go to John next?
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Norton, CAB member from North Reading. First of all, I want to thank my board for being here this evening. And in the same vein, I also want to apologize for the board, this board, the board of North Reading, but the boards of the other respective communities that are serviced by the RMLD, for not having had the proper time to be able to have this dialogue between your respective CAB representatives and the respective boards of selectmen. As Chairman Masseri pointed out, it's something that I have prided myself, having been the rep from North Reading for 11 years, that I try to keep our board informed on major issues. And Mr. Cameron has also been very diligent in that. He and I have attended meetings in the past on different issues. Unfortunately, the narrow time frame, whatever promulgated it, that we worked in, didn't allow that dialogue to happen. And again, for that, I apologize. I think that in the future, this serves as an example of why these types of dialogues are needed. I think if we had it, this wouldn't have happened tonight. And I could have gone to the board and, you know, let them digest what was being presented to them, had a dialogue with them, and then be able to get their input and bring it back here on a vote. So I think history has set itself. I think going forward, these type of issues need to have more time to be able to digest these things, be able to work back and forth with the respective boards of selectmen, and, you know, get their input and be able to bring it back here for a vote. Having said that, again, I apologize to my board, and, you know, let's do the right thing and move forward.
Okay,
Thank you,
John.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other members? Mary Ellen?
You know, I do want to make it clear, and that the Power and Rate Committee, over the course of at least 2 years prior to January 2011, were reviewing and discussing these contracts. The CAB, the Citizens Advisory Board, and the board voted on these in January 2011. They were all public meetings. All the board meetings are publicly televised. All the meetings are publicly noticed, and agendas are complete. When this discussion came up again, there were Power and Rate Committee meetings in the fall. There was a meeting in December. There was a meeting in early January, all publicly noticed. The board meetings were televised in December and in January. So I just want to let everyone know that in terms of public notice and opportunities were there. There may be a little, you know, so I do want to leave it at that.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Mary Ellen. We're still doing the public officials, guys, so I
Mr. Chairman,
might ask you to be a
rebuttal
little
to
patient. And I would ask you, however entertaining that might have been, if you have a cell phone, if you could turn it off, that'd be great. It's okay, there'll be worse done to us tonight.
Yeah, rebuttal.
I kind of like that ringtone. You'll have to send it to me.
I will reprimand my son for
Phil.
Yeah, first, Mr. Chairman, again, to
Well, just let me ask you.
let
I
me
mean,
go forward.
Well,
Let me
hang
go
on a
forward.
second.
Let me just
I'm gonna
say.
ask you to hang on a second.
Yeah.
If there are other comments by public officials, could we hear those, or is this, do you want the floor now?
I want the floor, I take the floor now, unless one of the other selectmen wish to speak.
Well, he had his hand up, so that's why I'm,
Okay.
and I'll be
okay,
Okay.
sir. Again, Phil, I don't wanna cut you off, but
That's fine.
we started with the elected
That's fine. Like
officials.
I
I
said,
think out
we're
of
all-
courtesy, we should
We're
finish
friends
them.
before, we're always gonna be friends even afterwards.
Believe me, we'll have more difficult things to talk about than this. Sir?
Thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Chair. Sean Delaney, North Reading Board of Selectmen. And as I said, I'll be brief. As Mr. O'Leary has just said, I'm here requesting your board to table your decision you made a month ago. Give us the opportunity, now that we've had some education as to what a rec is and what it's meant to retire, and what it's meant to sell. As Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Messeri said, this was an exchange of emails that came about starting at 10 o'clock this morning. As I try to work, I try to get educated on this particular issue this evening. I think it'd be incumbent upon you to give us that opportunity. We have a responsibility to our constituency, the residents of North Reading. You have a responsibility to 4 communities and your ratepayers. Allow us to consider the issue in more detail, and maybe we'll come to the same conclusion you have, Mr. Chair, that it's wise that you retire and not sell. But at this point, I can't make an educated decision on that, and we can't advise our representative here as to what we believe as a board is to be the right decision. So I encourage you to table your decision, reconsider it, and hold off until we've had that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Elected officials, and then I am. You want to let one
Well,
more?
let me just
All right, all
go,
right.
and then
Marzi,
I'll
if
cede
you
to
could let
Marcy
me,
at that point.
let Commissioner Pacino have his say, and then
The
you
only
can
thing I
take
would
the
like
mic.
to say is, yes, the recs may have been discussed in the Power and Rate Committee, of which I'm not a member and did not attend. At no time were the recs discussed at this board meeting. They were not discussed at this board meeting, not that I can remember. I've looked at the minutes. There was no discussion as to what to do with these recs. You know, I mean, I hate to criticize the CAB, because I actually was one of the architects of the CAB, you know, and it's always been a very proud moment for me when I see them in operation, being one of the architects of that group. But, you know, it's clear to me that the CAB members, and, you know, I apologize, John, I don't mean to, may not have got to their individual boards with this issue and got their input. Clearly, from what I see from the Wilmington, I mean, I understand the Wilmington people, the town manager only heard about the issue today, as did the Linfield. So I'm not so sure exactly what, you know, the CAB members got input from their boards, and I think, you know, again, we should go back and hold off and give some more time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're next. So be ready.
Marcy West, Chairman of the Finance Committee in Town of Reading. I had some process questions that I think are worth talking about, because it sounds like this decision was reached in a very short time frame. It was reached in a time frame that is a holiday time frame. It doesn't sound like people had enough time to go back. Now, you said that there were some reasons behind that, but you didn't really want to get into that. The other thing that I'm curious about is, Mr. Solly mentioned a specific policy that this is in opposition to, or appears to be in opposition to. Are there specific policy numbers that this meets? So, in other words, the justification for doing this were these other policy numbers in the process.
All right, you want me to try to answer those? If you ask too
Yes.
many, I'll forget them.
Sorry.
You can ask the rest. I guess, I mean, to me, it seems like we've been debating this issue forever. So, you know, it's not an issue that, I mean, when I say this issue, the issue to decide to add renewable resources to our portfolio, and then sort of the follow-up issue, which is, you know, what do we do with the RECs now that we have them? And so this has gotten a tremendous amount of debate. So it hasn't been given, in my view, it has not been given sort of the short shrift, if you will. You know, all of our meetings are open except those that get into executive session, and that would not be, discussing this would not be a reason to go into executive session. So I think we've had a fair and open dialogue, albeit one where there's no consensus, or at least not a unanimous consensus at this point.
And what was the starting point of that discussion with this group? Because it sounds like there's been a long time of discussion, according to what Mr. Pacino said, but.
We've been discussing whether to, I mean, we started out 4 years ago, the Green Choice Program, at least 4 years ago, and we felt that was a relatively quick and easy way to give, you know, people that want renewable energy sources an option to make their own election, and a fair number of customers did. And then we directed, it's got to be close to 3 years ago, we directed the staff to go bring us some projects. And they did, and we looked at some of them and says, wow, that's way too expensive, we're not paying that. And they eventually brought us two that we felt were, you know, given, you know, my knowledge of the renewable energy market and what projects cost, I thought they brought us two very good projects. And so those have been, I think we signed the contracts in January, but they were debated 6 months prior to that. So it's been a year and a half since we've been talking about that. I think the first time I recall hearing about possibility of selling the RECs was like September, October. So that was what, 4 months ago? So it hasn't been, you know, a quick decision. I mean, believe me, we've had a lot of debate on this, as you probably surmise from
It just sounds like the debate didn't get to all of the broader numbers of parties that really had a vested interest in this.
Well-
and I don't know what that breakdown is, but it sounds like there was some type of communication breakdown somewhere along the way.
Well, the communication breakdown, I think, was not deciding before you signed the contracts what you're going to do with the RECs. The assumption that at least 3 board members made is that we would keep them. And so, again, I mean, I think as far as communicating with the public, these meetings where we've discussed this have all been, you know, public. These are televised. We do have the CAB, which is intended to represent the Board of Selectmen. We've had several meetings with them over this entire time period. You know, I'm not saying they can't change their vote. The vote is 4-1 to keep them. So from our point of view, you know, I mean, I think it's great to see a lot of participation here tonight, but I certainly don't want people to go away thinking that we haven't either sought or have sought to avoid public input, because that's just not true. I mean, we have had a lot of that. So I think that answers your second, or at least tries to answer your second question.
So it sounds like if you had renewable energy and there are no RECs, you would not consider that renewable energy. So
You can't consider it renewable energy.
So the fact that you actually bought energy that is good for the environment in your mind, has no value without this piece of paper, which is gonna cost us a lot of money to keep.
That's how it's defined.
That's how renewable energy is defined. I mean, that's how the EPA defines it, that's how the federal government defines it, that's how the state of Massachusetts defines it.
In regulations that apply to public utilities.
Well, no, I mean, if you buy renewable energy, even if you're a municipal, and you sell those RECs, it's as if you never bought renewable energy. I mean, in our financial reports, we would have to be very careful to avoid saying we had renewable energy in our portfolio, because we would run afoul of the
So,
regulations.
in actuality, though, you did buy renewable energy.
We did. And that's why we want to keep the RECs. At least that's why, that's why I want to keep the RECs.
Whether you have that piece of paper or not, you invested money in a venture that is renewable energy and increased that demand for that.
No, we bought power, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're buying electricity, which is, of course, all mixed up in the grid. You're not physically getting the electrons generated. You're buying power, not investing in a utility.
But
We
you
do have
choose where you're
investments.
buying the power
We actually
from.
do have investments in some power
I
plants,
know.
but we're not invested, we're buying the energy.
But you
Agreed.
chose where that source is.
We have contracts with them that include the renewable energy
Yeah,
attributes.
And let's be
it's-
clear, the Swift River Hydro, those facilities existed before we showed up to buy their output. I mean, we toured one of these facilities, a little bit familiar with electric generators. I mean, this thing belonged in a museum piece. It was unbelievable. It had a nameplate on it called Westinghouse. Fred, when was the last time you saw a Westinghouse generator?
It was competition, so I know what it is.
So, you know, I mean, so in that particular case, they didn't need our money to invest because they're already there. But we wanted their output. Their output was prior to us buying it, just being sold into the ISO New England markets. And so we wanted it. So we got it.
Question?
I'm sorry, I'm going to acknowledge Mr. Soley and then you, Mary Ellen.
The renewable energy dogma, to me, arose only since December. When we made these power contracts, I viewed Swift River Hydro as renewable. We get power from the New York Power Authority, which is hydropower. I view that as renewable. As I said before, only recently have we learned about the dogma of renewable power, that if you keep the RECs, you get a gold star. Dogma does that. If you sell the RECs, you don't get the gold star, but you get money. And those thoughts only emerged in our December meeting. Prior to that, as a commissioner, I didn't know about this renewable power dogma and that you had to have the gold star. To me, it is, are we getting power from someplace that doesn't burn up a fossil fuel? New York Power Authority, it's hydro. To me, that's non-fossil fuel. A few months ago, I would have said that's renewable, but now that I know about the dogma, I only can say it's non-fossil fuel based. But so as you asked, it's only recently that we knew about all the semantics of the deal.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen, you wanted to?
I'll pass, thank you, Dick.
I'd like to say that when we purchased these contracts, that was, I thought, explained really quite clearly, so I'm quite surprised that the whole board was not realizing what we were purchasing.
I agree with that, but, you know, we are where we are, and I think, you know, we have documentation of all these discussions going back months, but I don't think that getting into that's gonna really help us tonight. So now I'm gonna acknowledge other members of the public. Fred, you got your hand up first, so I'm gonna, and then John. I'm sorry about the Westinghouse remark.
Not offensive. They're really not in much business anymore, so.
No, they're not.
Fred Van Magnus, resident of Reading, town meeting member, former FinCom vice chair, and also a former member of the Citizens Advisory Board. So I can speak, I think, on some of this stuff that's been tossed around here tonight. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to speak again at this meeting. And I think we're all here for the same basic purpose, whether we're on this side of the table or on that side of the table, and that's to provide the very best value to all of the residents and the businesses in the rate territory that the RMLD services. However, there's a few things that I'm hearing tonight, and I'd just like to get some clarification on it. First of all, it was my understanding that these RECs that we do get, the renewable energy certificates, do have, in fact, a finite time life on them, that they do not go forever.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Just so you know, and I'm not sure the exact timing, but RECs generated during calendar year 2012 can be sold several months into 2013, and I'm not sure whether it's 3 or 6.
Till June 15th.
Okay, so we have until 6 months into the following year to make a final decision, because if we wait in 2012, we're going to receive some RECs. If we hold them until June 15, 2013, they're going to expire anyway. So they do have a shelf life, so to speak.
Thank you for that, and that was my understanding. I did hear from one of the commissioners, I think Mrs. O'Neill stated earlier in this meeting, that holding these requisitions for a period of time and not selling them would in fact give us a leg up down in the future if in fact there was some regulation that came into play. So I don't understand how something that expires could have a benefit to us to meet some numerical count in the future should there be some regulation. So I don't understand that, but I think that's, and I don't want to put words in the commissioner's mouth, but I think that's what I heard. Is that correct?
Right, well, my understanding is that we keep getting new ones each month, so.
But the ones that we have that have an expiration would expire and therefore wouldn't count if there's any future regulation. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. There was also a statement here about the fact that there was numerous discussions about RECs at a lot of meetings, and I am familiar with the fact that you have a Power and Rates subcommittee. It was quite interesting because it's been a long time since I've actually gone back and looked at some of the minutes from some of these subcommittee meetings. But of significant concern to me is to look at the topics and then to have one single notation after the topic that said, and discussion ensued. You know what that means to me? Absolutely nothing. I can't understand what and discussion ensued. I have no idea what took place. And there's no recorded portion of that meeting. I can't go to the cable TV. I can't go anywhere. So I don't know what took place. So to say that there was a lot of dialogue, and there may well have been, and I assume there was, but where do I go to get that information? I don't really have a basis for it. I also probably am one of the instigators, I guess, and I don't like to throw arrows around here on this issue. I am very concerned about it. I have put forth a number of $30 million, and it was basically the $500,000 round number from Swift River and $1.5 million or so from the Concord biomass facility when it comes online, depending on whether it comes as 2013 or wherever it comes. But the combined amount of money on that is about $2 million a year. And what was bothering me so much as I left the meeting here in January was the motion that was put forth, and John, I think, you made the motion on the CAB. And that motion, which passed 4-1, and now I understand that the Wilmington Board of Selectmen did not have any knowledge about what was going on, and 2 members on the CAB are from the town of Wilmington. The North Reading Board of Selectmen have said tonight that they didn't know anything about it, and that's a 3rd member of the CAB. So 3 out of the 5 members, at least as far as I know right now, had no discussion with any Board of Selectmen at all, so had no other basis at that meeting for their decision other than their personal knowledge of what had been taking place or decided or discussed at any prior meeting. Now, it was my understanding that that motion, and I don't have it, I don't have a copy of the motion that the CAB, that John made, but I believe that motion was the same motion that the RMLD took at their meeting, and my recollection, and Mr. Chairman, maybe you can really clarify this. My recollection was that the board voted that the recs that they received now that are in hand, or in the future that they will receive, from Swift River and from the Concord Biomass Facility, the motion was made to retire those recs for the duration of the contract. That was the motion. Yet tonight
Yes, sir.
and that was the vote. And that was the vote.
We're not disputing that, Fred.
Okay, but tonight I've heard that, well, we can, you know, that can change. That we can discuss it and bring it up every year or whatever. And I don't understand how that vote said we're going to do this for the duration, but now we can decide not to do that for the duration and we can bring it up each year. And I just don't understand that.
I think it's actually pretty simple. We set a budget every year, you know, and we always make changes to it. Okay, so there is, and again, I mean, I don't want to, sorry if that sounded flip, but it wasn't intended to be. But because these things are generated each month, and you have an opportunity to do it, I mean, this board, this current board, and this is my personal view, can't bind some future board. If 2 years from now there's 5 different people sitting here, they could vote to overturn, forget Rex, they could vote to overturn any vote that we took. So, and again, I mean, you know, just because we signed the contract is binding on RMLD. Those 2 contracts are legally binding instruments. But the decision on what to do with the Rex, quite frankly, can be made periodically. And so, you know, I don't want to, you know, mislead anybody into thinking anything else.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Here's where I see this. I think we've had a substantial process breakdown over the whole course of this discussion. And I don't want to play Monday morning quarterback, and that's not my intent. But I don't think that the CAB members adequately advise their boards of selectmen and maybe their constituencies in the towns about the arguments pro and con of whether you sell or retire the Rex. And votes were taken and decisions were made that potentially bind this board, or at least right now, it was a $30 million decision, in my opinion. It wasn't $500,000. And we have heard that there is a potential and more substantial source of Rex that can come online here. There's been a discussion about a solar facility. And we know that solar Rex have a substantially higher value. So this becomes now a very important policy decision for the board. So what I'm going to ask, and I'm very unfamiliar with being on this side, I'm more comfortable being on boards. But what I'm going to ask this board to do tonight is a couple of things. One, to vote to reconsider the action that you took at the January 1st meeting and take a formal vote to reconsider that action. And then hold any future vote on whether you're going to sell or retire Rex until this board holds, and I would suggest, a joint meeting where the boards of selectmen of North Reading, Linfield, Wilmington, and Reading are invited to this room along with the CAB representatives, and a full airing of the process and the decisions and the impact, both now and in the future, of selling or retiring Rex is totally understood, and so that each Board of Selectmen hears exactly the same information on exactly the same night, and they can all process it together. And I'm going to ask and hope that you will consider what I'm asking for at this point to try and bring everybody together on a decision. And I'm not going to say what the right decision is at this point. We all have our difference of opinion. But I really think we need to step back, and I think we now need to really re-examine how we got to where we are and how we should best move forward as a group and a team. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the Board of Commissioners, for hearing me. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Good evening. My name is John Arena. I live at 26 Francis Drive. I'm a town meeting member, a member of the Finance Committee, and passionate subject about the matter of energy. Thank you to the Commission for entertaining this, the Board of Directors for entertaining this line of inquiry tonight, and kind of going back over old ground. There's two lines of inquiry I'd like to engage in. Maybe to amplify Fred's point, there has been a process defect. And there aren't many times in life, I find, where you have a chance to revisit a decision without having a cost to the revisitation. This is one of them. If I've understood what tonight's comments have been, you've got until March. It's approximately 45 days, during which a full and open discussion can occur, and no matter what outcome, there can be no claim as to a process defect. If this decision is made to stand, if the question isn't revisited, my suspicion is this board will, to some degree, lose the credibility of having the opportunity not taken. There's no downside to waiting another week or three. There is a downside if a decision is poorly made in terms of either precedential value or flawed logic being used to make future decisions. I do have a problem with the assertion that a decision made in perpetuity can be recast as if it were made annually. The board had the opportunity to insert an annual review clause, which in its wisdom it chose not to do. Now, the fact that the board has the ability to revisit a past decision does not mean it is required to. And there's a world of difference between being required to do something and having the opportunity to do it. And to me, that's fundamental. So I think the assertion that somehow the opportunity of revisitation exonerates the board from the original decision doesn't fly in my book. Lastly, has the board made an assessment of the value of Rex produced by Concord Steam and Swift River for the duration of either the contracts or any other arbitrary length of time? Is there some economic estimate that the board has produced of the value of those Rex?
There are futures markets for Rex. So to the extent that any of you might be familiar with energy futures, if you're a large consumer of natural gas, you can hedge your costs out, probably 11 years. I think it's 11 years. there are futures markets that you can buy financial instruments to hedge your prices. Rec markets aren't quite as mature as that. There are prices that go out a year or two, maybe 3, but after that they get kind of, there's no exchange traded number that you can look at.
We're putting
So
aside.
so just let me
Sure.
complete the answer. There was an estimate developed, trying to recall from memory, but I think it was a couple of years' worth of exchange price and then some assumed escalation rate after that.
So putting aside futures, which are essentially trying to hedge where the world's going, on December 11th, I believe, December 28th, you produced a document advising the RMLD board and also the Citizen Action Board, in which you did a survey of the 14-year period between, it looks to be 2012 to 2024. This is a document signed by you. Are you familiar with the document I'm referring to?
If you're referring to the spreadsheet forecast I made, I'm generally
did.
familiar with
Yes.
it. Yeah.
What was the value of the RECs that you projected over that 14-year term?
Oh, I want to say they were started at $29 a megawatt hour and went up.
And what was the total value of the RECs over that 14?
That I don't recall. If that document, by the way, is in the minutes of the
It
the
is.
meeting. So you probably have it in front of you.
I do. It's $31.6 million. So the number that was discussed and sent around was by your own hand. It was an assessment you produced for this board.
Absolutely. And if you also look at what I think you need to do is look at what our power supply costs will be over that time period, because that'll be even a much bigger number.
Understand, but the 31 is not an invention of, it's actually derived from RMLD assessments. And those are still valid now, some 2 months later?
Actually, I don't know. I've been busy with projects, and I've been unable to look at what prices
Okay.
are. Now, prices could be different today. It could be high, it could be low.
Again, I think the central point, Fred's kind of stolen some of the thunder. This is an opportunity to do the right thing. And it's a time-limited offer. You have 45 days. And you can emerge the hero or you can emerge the goat. And I think no matter how it turns out, you'll look inevitably better. The group will look as an apolitical entity by looking at the process and ignoring what the outcome wants to be, and letting the constituents and letting the ratepayers help determine what that output needs to be. Lastly, I'll give you one piece of data which I found fascinating. The town of Wellesley solves this problem very cleverly. They don't model it as a two-value decision. It's not a yes or a no. What I believe they do, and I have to credit somebody else for getting this data, is they survey the fraction of their ratepayers that wish to buy green energy. And if my memory is correct, in Wellesley, and I don't have the time period, 6% of their ratepayers have asked for that option. And that 6% represents 1% of the total power capacity produced by Wellesley. So Wellesley takes 1% of their RECs and retires them. It strikes me as a perfect way to divide the question, because you reflect the wishes and desires of both sides. No one is disenfranchised, and it's the perfect Solomon solution to a Gordian knot otherwise. It also apparently works. So one advantage to the Wellesley solution is I would assume it could be implemented in other towns with reasonable ease. I don't know that. I suppose one would have to survey our community to see to what degree the ratepayers would be willing to buy RECs and pay the higher price, but perhaps that's something that's done already. I'm not familiar with your business. But it struck me as a very clever solution, because everyone walks away happy. And the proportion of the community that buys them is exactly the proportion that's retired. It's wonderful. It's the perfect balance. So I'll throw that out as a, instead of just coming and commenting, maybe a potential solution to the problem that, again, extending the opportunity throughout opening the discussion would allow you to maybe select that or some other alternative outcome and emerge the hero here. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, John. Any other members of the public wish to be? Young lady there.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Donna Dudley. I live at 35 Glenmere Circle, and I'll have to confess now to apparently being the irritant in the clamshells of everyone here. I have tried to make a really due diligent effort to try and understand this issue. I've spent hours on regulatory websites. I've spoken to Taunton, Ipswich, Wellesley, and Concord, directors of their municipal light companies, as well as some of their energy managers, to try and get their sort of take on it. And I think we all know where I came down on it. I do feel that this issue has not, I'm going to respectfully challenge the idea that you've been talking about it with two comments. One is that I've now watched the December 15th RMLD board meeting 3 times. That's because of a technical glitch that RCTV, and they weren't able to get the current meetings. So it kept repeating itself, showing it over and over. And I wanted to be sure I understood everything. And in that meeting, even Ms. O'Neill said she didn't feel she had enough information on the recs to make a decision at that time. So the idea that the decision was already decided many months or years before that, and all 3 of the retire people had always planned to retire them, I think could be in dispute based upon that comment at the 12:15 meeting. And the other thing that concerns me is the process thing that everyone else mentioned, in that philosophically what you're doing by retiring the recs is you're creating an involuntary green choice program. So there are people in Reading that they're voluntarily paying more. They've signed up to pay more to be in this program. And so their recs have to be retired. The recs you purchase on their behalf have to be retired. By retiring all of the recs that belong to every other ratepayer, which is all of the towns and every individual, you're forcing us to be in a green choice program that we didn't sign up for. So I have a little bit of a philosophical problem with that. The last thing I wanted to ask was, it is true that there's a degree of uncertainty about the future values of recs, but we have a fair market value, a fair value for them today, so they can be accounted for at their fair value today. And I'm a little concerned that accounting standards wise that you can take what is a commodity, you do have a security that's of a monetary value, and that you don't have to disclose somewhere in your financials via footnote or some other method that you would have retired $500,000 worth of SWIFT recs, for example. Either way, whether they were sold or retired, I would still think it would require a disclosure, so I'm just curious about the accounting standards of all that and meeting compliance with those. In talking with the state DPU and some of the other regulatory agencies, as well as the municipals, there's a little bit of a Wild West component to this whole thing, and that the munis are not subject to any of these regulations. And therefore, the munis are sort of out there writing their own rules to a certain degree. And they're free, if you will, to create their own standards around how they want to market their portfolios. And if you look on some of their websites and some of their annual reports, they're actually saying they have 22.1%, or if you will, of renewable energy, regardless of the fact that they've sold their recs. So the last thing that I would ask is, well, if you're going to revisit this and all the town's elected officials be involved, is that there be some effort made to contact these other towns. Because why are they all selling their recs? What's the spin they have on it? Because I think some of what I heard from them is, one, the selling of the recs doesn't delegitimize the original contract, because when you buy a bundled contract, you are supporting that project, whether it was in existence or not before. The project doesn't want to sell you just the energy. They want to sell you just the recs. That's what's going to keep them going. So they don't feel that the selling of the recs delegitimizes the contract. And they also feel that they don't want to leave that much money on the table. So it would be curious to know, I would be interested in understanding better by having some of the other municipals come into this joint meeting and sharing their sort of take on, why they've come to the decision that they've come to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to make a comment? Okay, well, let me thank each and every one of you that took time out from your families and your businesses and everything that you do to come down here and share your thoughts with us tonight. We really do appreciate that, and I can assure you that everything that was said here tonight will be carefully considered. I guess we, sort of the next,
Mr. Chairman?
well, if you're gonna read the motion, I'm not
No,
ready for it yet.
I'm not gonna read the motion. I have it,
Well, I was gonna suggest a different path, if you
okay,
might.
go ahead then.
I guess I am, I do wanna make sure that we provide, certainly the elected officials in the town we serve, and also our customers, the opportunity to be heard on this. I mean, I think to a degree that's what the role of the CAB was intended to be, but perhaps on an issue like this, the issue itself just may be too complicated for that process to work as effectively as it might. So, and I certainly don't want to create even the hint of a perception that we're not sensitive to those concerns. So I think it would make sense for us to not sell the RECs we have, to arrange some process for meeting with, either individually as a group, should they so desire, the boards of selectmen of the four towns. I mean, we've already sort of had a little session with the Reading Board of Selectmen, but I want to make sure they might want another one. And they certainly, the other towns have indicated that they'd like that. So it seems to me that before we reconsider the vote that we took, I believe it would be useful to establish a process that provided for that input. And that additional input may provide additional guidance to the CAB, and it may provide additional guidance to us. So what I'd suggest, with all due respect to the Dean of Commissioners of the Municipal Light World, 25 years, is it? Something
25
like that?
years, yep.
So it seems to me that we should not reconsider our vote tonight, but set up a process where we make sure we get everybody's input, and then we'll reconsider that that decision once all that input has been received. In the meantime, we'll keep the RECs, and as long as they have value, and I don't think any are going to expire soon. Is that right? I'm looking to Ms. Parento for. June 15th. Okay, so the ones that we got from 2011 from Swift River, we have until June 15th to decide either to sell them or retire them. So that gives us about 6 months. I hope to the good Lord that that's enough, but you never know. Might not be. So that's what I'd like to propose. And
Yeah,
no, well, that was a date that I think the general manager mentioned, but I don't know that that's a.
That's the earliest we could retire what we have right now.
Right, that's the earliest, but not the latest.
Okay.
So it is not the intention of the board, because your vote as it currently stands is to retire those.
Right, well, retire them means we hold them. Okay, so, and we can hold them until June 15th and sell them at that date if that becomes the new decision. And that'll give us roughly 6 months, maybe 5 months, maybe 4 months. Hopefully
Point of order.
in a minute, Bob.
Point of order.
In a minute, Bob. And then, so anyway, that's my proposal, that we suggestion go forward. And now, Bob, you may.
I think Robert's rule says that reconsideration should take place at the next meeting. Further, we do not have the minutes in our books of the January 5th meeting. I do recall, however, that the motion said that we should retire the wrecks, not sell them. So if we have that motion going, we cannot sell. I believe tonight is the latest date at which we can reconsider. I was one of the 2 nay votes, so I cannot move to reconsider. I believe what we should do is reconsider. Then we once more have the motion in hand, and then we should table it until the March meeting. That gives us almost 2 months in which the selectmen and other bodies can get together, make decisions, make votes, consult with us, and we really don't have to do anything until June. So, as one speaker said, you have a get out of jail free card. You can get all the inputs, and if the motion stands, nothing has changed. And if we decide to change minds, then you've lost nothing. But I cannot move to reconsider.
Well, with all due respect to Robert's rules, they're nice guidelines, but to me, the process that I described is far more important than that. I mean, this is a controversial issue. If we took a motion to reconsider 2 months from now, even if that's in violation of Robert's rules, I gotta tell you, I think that's a far better approach to make sure that the elected officials in our town at least have the input they want. I mean, and get the education they feel they need.
Mr. Chairman, first I want to thank you for your leadership and your concern about the input from the different selectmen from the four towns in the district. I think that you're to be lauded for that, for what you just said in terms of that. One of the things we could do tonight is, instead of actually doing a reconsideration motion, we could actually put forth a whole new motion to instruct the department not to sell the wrecks before June 15th, so the department has clear indication what they would like to do. And as part of that motion, that there be a process to receive input from, that we develop a process that would input from each of the 4 selectmen in each of the 4 towns in order to develop that. That could be a whole new motion as opposed to actually a reconsideration at that point. I prefer the reconsideration. That was I originally going to suggest. Again, I voted in the not the favorable side, so I cannot make the motion either. But I think you could possibly do it as a whole new motion at this point, so the department, so poor Vinnie and Jane are not scratching their heads what we're trying to say, and do it as basically saying that the wrecks are not to be sold before June 15th, which is the latest date that could be sold, and that a process be developed for input from each of the 4 towns, both the selectmen and the ratepayers in each of those towns, that we develop that way of doing it.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Mary Ellen, anything to say?
I feel a need to respond to some of the comments that were raised tonight. I stand by my decision to retire the RECs for 15 years. If we want renewable energy in our portfolio, this is what it requires. That's how I see it. I see Fred talking about the solar energy hub motion on the agenda. Those RECs, we are not keeping those RECs. The RECs that we are keeping and we voted to keep are the ones that we approved in the contracts that we approved, both Concord Steam and Swift River. I'm offended by the charges from some members of the audience that there was a process defect or breakdown in communications in terms of the board, and I cannot speak for the Citizens Advisory Board. I'm a volunteer elected by the town of Reading. I am not the staff. And in terms of the Board of Commissioners. It was a fair and open process, and I feel comfortable with that. I also want to speak to Donna's remarks about what I said at the December meeting. And I will say that I said that, and I'm embarrassed. And I have written a memo to the chairman to that effect, with other things. I felt that staff muddied the waters in terms of how that is viewed. They were not upfront with what constitutes renewable energy. And I was momentarily kind of pushed off the road, and I feel that there was attempts to refer to that energy as sustainable energy and whatnot. I do feel that's why that happened. I am embarrassed by that because I never would have said that. I support green energy, renewable energy, sustainable energy, and I am proud that we signed those contracts, and I stand by my vote.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. At this point, you know, a lot of water's gone over the dam, so to speak, for Swift River and perhaps on this issue. And what I'd like us to focus on is not so much what happened before, but we need to find a way to move forward. You know, there's obviously some strong held opinions, and I think that's good. And a good, healthy debate where we can disagree and still be agreeable, I think, is where we want to be. So, you know, I heard the comments, but my focus here is going to be on what do we do from starting tomorrow, and we'll try to put what's happened behind us. Is there anything you'd like to add for us, Gina?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I agree with Phil on your leadership and appreciate the discussion. And thank everybody for coming. I do agree also with the concept of putting together a process to get further input from all the boards in the 4 towns. I'm not sure how to do that, but.
Well, we'll deal with that once we get agreement that that's what we're going to do. All right, so Commissioner Pacino has sort of taken my suggestion and as always, improved it a scotch. And so the concept here, which we hope, let's have some discussion about the concept among the board members, which is basically to direct the RMLD to sort of sit tight, hold what they have, and establish a process by which the elected officials, at least in all the other towns, have had an opportunity to ask additional questions and receive the input, receive the information they want, and give us the input they would like. So that's a concept. And I'm going to ask you to be patient for 1 second. I'd like to know how the other members feel about that concept before we start talking motions. Bob?
I'm ready for a motion.
Gina?
I'm not sure I quite fully understood.
Well,
I didn't quite catch where he was going with that.
well, again, what I think is important is that before we do anything else, okay, I mean, we've had elected officials come to us and say they don't have the information they need. I think we should start a process to give them the information they need. And I think we should start a process that once they have that, they can give additional feedback as they deem appropriate to the CAB and to this body. And then I think it's time to, with that additional input, decide whether we want to reconsider or not. Okay. You seem to have a lot of heads nodding up and down here, so
Let me read the motion.
I guess I'll ask Vice Chairman Pacino to read the motion.
Was there another input out here from anybody?
Yes, I'm sorry, you did have your hand.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Just want to make you aware of just a little bit of sensitivity with the timeline. A lot of our towns are approaching into budget season. At the same time, our town in March is going to go through a long long process with our residents. I'm passing a motion, a vote for a new school. That's in March. So I'd ask if it's okay, please be sensitive to our timeline, sooner than later, to try to work that through our chairman. But please keep in mind that all our towns are entering into a very busy season with town meetings approaching in April, and some towns and us in June. Just appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thanks for pointing that out. That
Yes.
is important.
That certainly will.
John, did you have your hand up?
No, just the observation that it would not be pejorative, it would not damage your position of waiting till June to vote to reconsider tonight. It has no functional difference other than making it clear you want to do-over. Balls out of bounds, you want it to repick. It functionally gets you to the same way, but I think it looks far better on the outside. A vote to reconsider is nothing but saying there's more data we need to look at it anew, and we want to reflect that on the record. June 15th is June 15th, it doesn't change. It's just structurally how we want to have this look to the outside. I think the second minor point is June 15th is the last day they can be sold. There must be some internal processing and paperwork and that sort of thing, so the effective date may be somewhat earlier than, I don't know, but I'm just making an observation. One is a calendar date, perhaps there's some.
Yeah, the actual transaction process is fairly quick. I mean, there's not a month's lead time or anything like that.
Is that correct, Vinnie? Vinnie, is that, okay.
All right, Fred, hang on a second. I guess the reason why I'd like to defer a vote on reconsideration until after we get the input is I don't want to take 3 votes. I'd like to take 2. We had one, taking a vote to reconsider tonight without having the input of the town, in my view, is an uninformed vote. So we're going to sit tight. What I'd like to do is sit tight until we give, again, the bodies that want the opportunity, the chance, and then we'll take a vote. I don't think we'll be disadvantaging anybody. We certainly won't be giving up anything, and I think that it'll make life a little easier in terms of procedure for us. Phil, why don't you at least get a motion on the table and we can just...
Chairman, just before,
Sir.
Steve O'Leary again, just in relation to process, again, Bob pointed out, Robert's rules, and you kind of set it aside, but if your bylaws call for that to be the governing set of rules, I was moderator in North Reading for 11 and a half years, I was moderator down here for 3 years, and the rules do mean something, and if you shouldn't just necessarily set it aside. Secondarily, and if your bylaws say that you can only be reconsidered at the next meeting, and this is your next meeting, then that's the only point that you can really reconsider your action that you previously took. From my vantage point where I'm sitting here, and we've asked you to specifically reconsider your previous action until you get some input from us, I think it would be a fine gesture on your part to do exactly that. And just reconsider your previous position, and then render a final decision after you have the requisite input from the other town officials and the ratepayers. To me, that's a cleaner process. It's clear as to where you are at what particular juncture, and then a final decision would be made after you get the requisite input that you desire now. So, to me, it would send a much stronger message to our board, to our community, and the other communities that you are really listening. You are willing to reconsider your action, you are going to reconsider it, and that you'll make a final decision as to how to deal with these wrecks after the input. So, taking an extra vote while you're thinking, you want to take 3, it sends a very clear and different message depending upon what action you take. And to me, I would just suggest, send a clear message to the ratepayers and the other elected officials in the other communities that you are truly reconsidering and seeking our input. Do that, you need to reconsider tonight.
Well, I'll respectfully maybe push back a little bit. I don't mean to imply any disrespect to anybody, but I think if somebody watched the tape here tonight, any official body, I think it would be pretty clear what our intent is. My concern about taking a vote for reconsideration tonight is it'll be a vote without that input, and I do think we can wait. I agree. Robert's rules are important, but again, I think so is getting the appropriate input. And if someone were to come back to me a year from now, if I'm still here and say, why did you do it? I wouldn't have any qualms at all. Any qualms at all. So thank you.
I'm getting a mixed message, though. In other words, you're telling me that you would like the input before you reconsider. And obviously, that's a pretty good message. I'd like the input before we make a final decision on things. But you're saying, no, not before we make a final decision, before I even consider reconsidering it. It's a very different message
Well,
that you're sending to me and how I'm receiving it. And I don't, again, I don't mean to speak for the collective board here, but I think it's probably the same. Little consensus?
Absolutely.
well, thank you for that.
You
but-
know, so, with all due respect, take the simple vote to reconsider, and then take some action prior to June 15th as to what you're gonna do after you get the requisite input.
I appreciate that, thank you. That would,
So send a clear message to us and our.
I'm gonna send you a clear message tonight that says we wanna come to your town, or you wanna have you come here, whatever your preference is, and we will give you the information you want. Will take as long as it takes, and you can then give us the input you want as much as it is appropriate.
Appreciate the gesture. and
Thank
just
you.
ask you to reconsider your action. Your previous
I guess I'd still like to have the motion read. We can continue.
Let me ask the question. I mean, would there be, the motion to reconsider would have to be from either Gina, yourself, or Mary Ellen. Would any of you wish to make that motion?
No,
No.
my understanding that it has to be made should properly be made at the meeting at which the vote was originally taken. It
No,
definitely
that's
would
not
be the
correct.
minutes
That's
dated
not
before
correct.
the
Well,
hour.
That is not correct.
this
I
is,
am not willing
Let's
to
not
do it.
argue.
hold on,
let's
hold
not
on,
argue
time out,
pol-
time out.
parliamentarian.
This is exactly
Right,
the dispute that I hope to avoid.
right, okay.
So,
Well, I asked that, if any of the three of you wanted to make that motion, it would be appropriate for one of you to make
I
that
mean, look,
motion, and all three of you said no, so.
I really don't
Go
want to
to-
get into a debate over what is or isn't allowed by Robert's rules to get in the way of doing what I think is right.
Since there's no desire in the three of you to ask for reconsideration, I will then move to instruct the department to not sell the RECs before June 15, 2012, and to have the department develop a plan and/or process that will allow all input to be received from all constituents.
Should it be retire, Phil, not?
What?
Retire? Not retire the.
Oh, not retire. So sorry. Gosh,
You gotta keep him on his toes. He's been here too long.
I was in Florida yesterday.
All right, do we need that read again?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
All
I'll
right, the
read it again.
secretary needs it read again. Try to get it
Okay.
right this time, will you?
Move to instruct the department to not retire the RECs before June 15, 2012, and to have the department develop a plan and/or process that will allow for all input to be received from all constituents.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, well, 5-0, that is unanimous. All right. I understand, the next item on our agenda is,
Can we defer that to the next meeting?
well, I don't think he's here. I think,
Chairman, before you start, I
Yeah.
just want to thank you on behalf of the North Reading Board
Mhm.
and all your board members for considering our input this evening.
thanks for coming.
Thank you. And on an aside, Reading Municipal Light does a terrific job
Thank
delivering
you.
services to North Reading, and in the wake of storms, does a very good job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming, guys. All right, I understand Jared's not here anyway, and given the hour, I'd like to table the presentation on the quarterly conservation program to next meeting. Any problem with that? Approval of board minutes, December 7th, tab B. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Sorry, that's on my agenda.
It's late.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the regular session meeting minutes of December 7th, 2011.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any comments on the minutes? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? 5-0, okay. let's see, we have 2 committee reports. The first is the Power and Rate Committee net metering rate. This is a rate that where customers have certain types of generation facility, such as solar, installed on their property. And on occasion, they generate more than they use, so they wind up sending kilowatt hours back to us. We have a rate for that. And it's been several attempts to try and get the language of the rate correct, and I believe that all of the comments have been included. Is that correct, Vinnie?
I hope so.
So we have the rate that's in tab C, and I'll entertain a motion to approve that rate.
Move that the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners accept the residential and commercial net metering rates based on the recommendation of the RMLD Power and Rate Committee, the Citizens Advisory Board, and the RMLD General Manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the tariff itself? Mary Ellen?
Yeah, quick question. I wanted to know why there was a limit on the residential customers as opposed to the commercial. I assume that's 20 kilowatts per day, per month? What does it mean?
20 kilowatts of capacity.
Oh,
And
capacity.
we wanted to do that because something above 20 kilowatts would probably constitute a commercial operation or some type of a, it wouldn't look like, it wouldn't look like a residential project that would be basically geared towards serving the needs of the residential customer. So that's why we kept it at 20. It was at 10 and we upped it to 20.
Thank you.
I mean, you put a 20 kW solar on someone's house, that's a big house. That's a big house.
Well,
And-
you know what 20 kW means. I don't even
Oh.
understand what it means in that
Okay,
context, so,
it's a lot.
okay, I'll take your word for it.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, the grammar police found a couple of things, and I don't think they even need to be discussed. So can you just send those down? And
Okay, so would
it's the
the,
same thing on both of them.
would the movement and the seconder accept Mr. Soli's?
The seconder will.
Okay, all right, so those are in. Any other discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0, thank you. And then the next item is another renewable energy project. This is a solar installation.
Wait a minute, did we okay the residential and the commercial?
Yes,
They're all in one
it was all one motion.
Okay, good, thank you.
I thought that's what you wanted.
Yep, just want to make sure.
And you got changes to both of them, right? Right, well, both the commercial?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so, the next topic is, to purchase the output, the electrical output of a solar energy facility being installed in our service territory. This was discussed at the Power and Rate Committee, but I don't believe it was ever formally brought forward to the board. And just so there's no dispute or no uncertainty about this particular purchase, we are not buying the RECs. We are only buying the electrical energy, and that's reflected in a much lower price. So I guess I will entertain a motion to have the full board approve this purchase.
Move that the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners to authorize the general manager of the RMLD to finalize negotiations and execute a contract with Solar Energy Hub for the purchase of not more than 4 megawatts of solar power in a term not to exceed 20 years on a site at 1 Burlington Avenue, Wilmington, Massachusetts, based on the recommendation of the RMLD Power and Rate Committee and the Citizens Advisory Board and General Manager.
Okay, could we, after the word solar power, insert the words, but not including the RECs, so there's no, I don't want to have this problem come up again? Would you accept that?
I accept that.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion?
Yes.
Bob?
Previously, this a motion such as this was very difficult for the board. I think also for energy services. At one point, we attempted to have a policy relative to this energy, and a policy was drafted, but basically it went nowhere. We were sort of ad hoc until we had our clarifying moment earlier this month, on January 5th. We had the motion that was at length discussed. And two big parts of the discussion, and it set a precedent. Now, it was only one vote precedent, but the Supreme Court does that frequently. So at last we have a precedent and things are clear. We had Commissioner Hahn's insightful analysis that said, should you have to do something about renewables, the low-cost way, which would be in line with Policy 19, is to buy the cheapest commercial power you can and then to get RICs. Another part of that clarifying moment was, I called it earlier, the dogma of RICs. That renewable energy is not renewable without RICs, and once you get them, you can't sell them. That's what the precedent was. So here we are, the next meeting later. We are proposing to buy power, not the cheapest power around, not to have RICs. There goes our precedent. So I would ask my colleagues, do you want this solar energy, or do you want a precedent? And precedents are important, especially the dogma of the RICs. We heard so much about that at the last meeting. We heard so much about it tonight. We're not getting RICs. We're not getting the cheapest power. When you look at the NYMEX gas futures for February, it's the mid $2. So gas is really cheap, even much cheaper than when this was first voted on in the committee. So policy 19, we're going against that. So I would ask my colleagues, do we have a precedent? Or are we once more back to ad hoc whimsy of the meeting?
Thanks, Bob. Any other discussion?
I guess I want to ask about, no other contracts were brought forth at the time, so I was under the impression it was a pretty competitive price.
Well, my recollection, it was very competitive just on the energy price alone, even without the RECs over the life of the contract, maybe not the first year. But I'm seeing Ms. Parento nod her head up and down in the affirmative, so, I mean, I'll tell you the reason why I voted for this, even aside from the fact that it would avoid a debacle about RECs, is that if you project conventional power prices over the life of this contract, on a net present value basis, this would be lower. So we would be fulfilling our mandate, if you will, Bob, even if that policy calls for it. So, go ahead.
Well, we don't have the minutes. I do recall that Commissioner Hahn said there is, with the way gas prices are, there's cheaper commercial power out there. Said it was a good price for solar, but there was cheaper out there.
else, Bob? Any other discussion?
I guess my recollection, if we're gonna do recollections, is that I thought that was a spot market power. There's been some discussion at meetings that that's gone down quite a bit compared to what it was.
It has. But again, over the next 20 years.
15-year contract.
Well, it says
20
20
years.
here, so.
At the time that we were negotiating the partnership.
I can only read what's in front of me. I can't read your mind. So it says, if this motion needs to be amended for 15 years, is that what you're saying?
It said up to 20, Jack, and I'm just clarifying that in the negotiation process, the contract term will be 15 years.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, so, did you, I got distracted. Did we answer your question?
I guess, yeah, it sounds like the cost is lower. That's why I voted for it.
Yeah, me too. All right, any other discussion?
But I don't have a crystal ball.
None of us do. You make the best decision you can with the information that's in front of you. There's no guarantees in life other than death and taxes. So, any other discussion on the motion? A vote in favor approves the purchase and directs the general manager to finalize negotiations. Vote against says we don't do that. So, all in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Abstention? One abstention. General manager's report.
I'm only gonna speak about one thing. Commissioner O'Neill, I think, brought up, what we were doing with respect to what the, Ron Daddario, the CCP representative, had talked about with respect to, some information that National Grid was sending out with respect to usage by customers and comparisons in the area that use the gas. We've looked at the company O-Power. It actually takes the information from companies and sends this information out to customers. Basically, they're a computer company. They'll take your information, put it into a certain form, and send it out to people who might be using more than other people in their neighborhood. That's what I've gotten so far. We do have information on our website with respect to what Energy Services has come up with on average usage for residential customers. You have certain building types, single-family homes, condos, and I think it goes by square footage. That's certainly another way to let people know how they're doing, because if you're in a neighborhood with a small house, and everybody else has big houses around you, they probably would be using more energy than you. I think it would be better if people found out that if they live in a 2,500 square foot house or in a condo or something like that, can they compare their electric bill or historical usage to what we have on our website that's based on an average of homes in our service territory. So I'm still gonna look at this and find out the best way to get this type of a message to our customers and what's the most meaningful. The other thing is that what O-Power sends out, that would probably be in a separate mailing. So there'd be a cost to that. I don't know if they send that information out via email or not. We are trying to make a move to get our customers to communicate. We're trying to communicate with them on the billing side on email. So that's what I've got so far on that. I'm still looking into it, but I will get back to the board either the next meeting or the meeting after with more information on how I think we could effectively communicate with our customers what their usage is vis-a-vis what the average is for towns that we serve.
All right, Vinnie, so it's in
Ongoing.
process, ongoing, thank you. Mr. Fournier, financial report.
We'll jump right to December. In short, November was a break-even month. We lost about $10,000. So I'll present tonight the December 31st statements, which represent the first 6 months of this fiscal year. Starting with page 3A for the month. We had another net loss, a negative change in net assets of $177,000, which thereby reduced our net income year-to-date to about $1.9 million. Year-to-date budgeted income was about 4.7, meaning we're down about 2.7 or 60% compared to the budget. Our actual year-to-date fuel expenses exceeded fuel revenues by about $327,000. On page 11B, looking at the revenues, year-to-date base revenues are under budget by about $1.5 million or 6.2%. The actual base revenues came in at $23.5 million compared to the budgeted amount of $25.1 million. On page 12A, the expense side, year-to-date purchase power base expense was $884,000, or about 6.4% under budget. The actual purchase power base costs were at $12.9 million compared to the budgeted amount of $13.8. On the operating and maintenance side, expenses combined were over budget by about $170,000, or a little less than 3%. The actual O&M expenses were $6 million compared to the budgeted amount of $5.8. The only expense account that was really significantly over budget is the overhead maintenance by about $229,000, and that can be attributed to the 2 storms we had in August and on Halloween. The depreciation expense and voluntary payments to the town were on budget. On the cash section, page 9, the operating fund is holding at about $8.8 million. The capital fund balance is at $4.1 million. The rate stabilization, a little over $6 million. Deferred fuel fund, $2.7 million. And the energy conservation fund balance is at $157,000. On the general information side, on page 5, year-to-date kilowatt-hour sales are at 362 million, which is about 10.1 million less than last year's actual figure, which puts us about 2.7% behind. Our revenues collected year-to-date were at $362,000, bringing the total collected since inception to about $970,000. On the division budget variance side, cumulatively, all 5 divisions were over budget by about $137,000, or just a little less than 1.5%.
Questions for Bob? Alan?
Bob, I wanted to go over the operating fund, page 9 again. I have a couple questions on this page. Can you explain to me why that's up so much from last year? And what do we want to have in that fund? What are our options?
Looking at the balances, usually the first thing that kind of comes to mind is deferred fuel, but there's really not too much change compared there. Looking, once again, my receivables are a little down on page 10. Last year they were at 4.5 million, and I only had 6 million in cash. This year I have 3.5 million in receivables, and which means I collected more, which means I would have a higher cash balance. So that'd probably be the first most significant piece that would cause the cash to be a little high. Plus, we've been profitable the last several years, so that'll add to your cash flow. Without getting into too much of it, I mean, that's probably the biggest piece is the receivable side.
If you're comparing the 8.8 million versus the 6.3 million, just in the operating fund, we never made a transfer out of the operating fund to capital fund at the end of last year.
To the construction fund.
Right. So we, what we did is we did make the transfer of the extra million, I believe, for the $1 million to the pension trust. But we didn't do any transfers at the end of fiscal 11. As far as what we want to keep in there, I would like to keep at least 1 month's payables in there, which is about between
You say in there, where?
in the operating fund,
Okay, thank you.
which is between $6 and $7 million.
So we're getting substantially higher than that, so I want to know what our options are on that. If this has been a couple of months at this level, so, and
I mean, one of the things that might afford us to do is to fund the pension trust again this year with a significant amount of money to get that back to a healthy status. And this will afford us the ability to do that.
So we need to start thinking about that, and we're getting closer to our budget year, so we should be thinking about that. What?
Just as an FYI, I just sent out letters today requesting 3 quotes to have the actuarial evaluation done for the pension trust. So we should be getting that done over the course of the spring, and there'll be a presentation. Whoever is awarded the contract to make a presentation to the board, and at that point we'll determine what the contribution should be.
A couple other questions. Under the restricted investments, rate stabilization, sick leave, buyback, OPEB, why are those zeroed out in the current year?
All those,
don't they have those Freddie Macs? Isn't maturity date in 2020?
They were all called in December.
They were what?
They were all called in December. Even our one investment in the pension trust, all 4 instruments were called. So they basically just converted back. We got the full value back, and they were put in the balances were put in the MMDT account. So right now they're not invested. We're looking to do something with that to achieve a higher interest rate, but right now they're just sitting in the MMDT account.
Okay, but we are, because that was my other question about looking at some investments.
Right, and this was not normal. I mean, they all got called. It just happened. I think it happened in the middle of December.
I have a quick question on policy. Was the general manager make a transfer in the fall? Did you make a transfer from one fund to another of almost $1 million? I should have gone back and checked those minutes. Do you remember that?
The only transfer that we made was we made the transfer for the pension trust.
I'll hold that for another time.
But we didn't. I don't remember us.
Just the rate stab at year end, just to get it over the 6 million mark.
Rate stabilization.
The pension trust was a operating issue in FY11.
Which one?
When we made the contribution to the pension trust, that was just a regular operating expense. As far as transferring balances between.
Okay, go ahead.
As far as transferring cash between restricted funds, whatever, we didn't do anything in the fall. If it did,
okay, so was it the year-end, the rate stab? I think you informed us in the fall. Right. I thought those, I want to just clarify, because that's been nagging me for a couple of months. I thought those types of transfers would go to the budget committee first. I thought that was the way that operated. Rather than just being informed about the transfer, I thought those went to a committee and then to the board for approval. That's a restricted cash transfer.
I'd have to look into. I do know that when we suggest transfers to the construction fund, we have gone to the budget committee. I can't remember, but that was, we did inform the board about. Inform the board about the transfer for the rate stabilization and the other one for the putting an extra $1 million or another $1 million into the pension trust.
I just want that clarified. It's whether or not that's supposed to be reviewed by be discussed with the budget committee and then go to the board for action. That's what I thought was past practice, and I do want that looked at.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, just a quick item. I think we're at the end of the quarter, and unless I missed it, I don't see anything for the pension trust in here.
I'll leave it in your mail slots in the GM conference room. I got them right here.
Anticipated the question.
Always one step ahead. Anything else, Phil?
No, that's it.
Gina? Bob? Okay, thank you. Power supply report.
Who's the gentleman? Why didn't you tell me? I thought you would tell me.
Thank you. I'm here to, did you want both the November and the December? Just December?
If you don't mind.
Not at all. If you turn your books to the December purchase power summary, RMLD's load for December was approximately 59 million kilowatt hours. And that was about a 5% decrease when we compare that to the previous December, excuse me. Our energy costs came in at $2.97 million, and that was equivalent to just a little over 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Our fuel charge for December was set at 5.5 cents, and our RMLD sales for the month of December totaled 52.5 million kilowatt hours. As a result of that, we undercollected on the fuel by 142,000, and that resulted in the deferred fuel cash reserve having a balance of approximately $2.7 million. The fuel charge remained at 5.5 cents for January, and it's currently anticipated to go down for the month of February, back down to 5 cents. On a calendar year basis for 2011, the fuel charge average was about 5.47 cents, and that was about a 6% decrease on a calendar year basis when we compare that to 2010. Additionally, on a calendar year basis, both the RMLD loads and our sales have gone down by about 1.5%. We'd like to look at that and see what the contributing factors are, whether it was weather, conservation, efficiency programs. Our total customer count was approximately the same. We had about 47 active accounts in calendar year 2011 versus 2010. So we're going to look to see what that contributing factors were for those decreases. On the capacity side, our peak demand for the month of December was 108.4 megawatts, and that occurred on December 19th at 6 p.m. That compares to a peak demand of about 113 megawatts, and that occurred on December 20th of 2010 at 6 p.m. also. Our monthly capacity requirement for the month was 201.3 megawatts, and that was equivalent to $6.94 a kilowatt month for capacity. Table 4 shows both the capacity and energy costs as well as the amount of energy that our contract supplied. The average cost for our capacity and energy in December came in to be a little over 7.4 cents. On the transmission side, our transmission costs for the month of December were $621,000, and that was up about 3% when you compare that to November's transmission costs.
Questions for Jane? Wore them down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Sullivan. After you do December?
December, absolutely. Beginning with GAW, no change. Number stays at $6.9 million. No change also on the soil.
So are we close to being done?
Yeah, I can promise you we'll be done before FY13 begins.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that.
You can hold me to that. We'll be done. We're working our way through it. A couple of sticky points, but we're working our way through it.
You filed the deed restriction, right? I think I saw that in the expenses.
With the EPA?
Oh, no, you were at...
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was with conservation.
Say that again?
You were in Cambridge to
I was in
file the
Cambridge. We
deed.
were also at Conscom. Everything's taken care of. We're all set. On to the December capital projects. Flipping the page from the variance report to the individual projects. Just to give the board an update, we were working on the first project, 5W9 reconductoring, the second project, which is the high-capacity tie project. We began the RTU replacement at Station 4, just technical services labor. We also began capacitor banks project. That's in progress. You'll see that number pick up next month. The relay replacement project at Station 4, again, technical services labor. Those relays are now on order. And project number 9, the 115 kV disconnect replacement, 2 of those have been installed at the substation. 2 are planned for hopefully before April. New customer service connections, commercial customers. We put in 2, one at Charles River up on Ballardvale Street in Wilmington, and the daycare center, Main Street in Wilmington. Flipping the page over to residential service installation.
Before you do that, Project 3, what's a URD?
Underground residential development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, can I ask a question about project number 1 there?
Certainly.
What's a sagged new Hendrix cable in November?
Hendrix cable is the type of overhead wire. It's the configuration of the wire. When you sag that, it has a certain sway to it, from dead level down to a midpoint between the two poles, or in the middle of the section.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
so they had to adjust it to get it
Always.
the catenary correct?
Always.
Okay.
We have gain space.
Mhm.
That gain space is, it's on a pole, it's a certain distance. Primary, secondary, telephone, cable, fire alarm, et cetera, space on a pole.
Okay.
On to routine construction. For the month, we replaced 22 cutouts, bringing our year-to-date, our fiscal year-to-date total to 154. And then again, onto the reliability report, beginning with Katy. The Katy rolling average is up marginally due to the loss of a low Katy, which was December 2010, coupled with the higher-than-average Katy for the month. The month-to-month Katy is up due to the time of each occurrence, which was midnight to 1 a.m. for each of the 5 greatest outages that we had. Flipping the page over to the SAFE numbers. The SAFE rolling average it's virtually identical to the month prior, and the month-to-month differs due to the number of customers that experience outage November and December. We were lower in December than we were in November. Whereas we had 867 customers affected in December, we had 1,231 affected in November. Finally, our months between interruptions is at 28 months. Reliability stats virtually the same as last month. Just to go through them, 129 calls, 27 outage incidents, and again, 867 customers affected. 0 feeder outages, 19 area outages, and 7 service outages. Causes of outage, pretty much the same as last month. Really nothing of note. Although we did have three lightning damage incidents on the 8th of December. Kind of odd. We had lightning here in the territory. Just to touch on the meter project, where year-to-date, our meter installation is just over 14,000 out of the 25,000 planned. That's all I have on that.
Any customer complaints on the meter change-ups?
What do you mean by that?
Anybody called up and expressed any concern?
Well, we try and do our communication as best we can. Certain customers have some issues, but everything's going very smooth.
Okay, good, thank you. Questions for Kevin? John?
Yeah, pardon this at this point, but I've got to go back to the storm of October. I haven't been here with the RMLD since, or the board. I would just like, excuse me, compliment the RMLD staff. Vinnie and I were before the Board of Selectmen in North Reading in November, just to go over the storm-related situation, the amount of power outages, et cetera, And I would like to compliment the RMLD staff on their rapid response to that and getting the customers back online as quickly as they did. Given the severity of that storm, I heard nothing but compliments on the way the RMLD handled that. So I'd just like to bring that to the attention of everybody concerned here tonight.
Thank you, John, for that. That's very helpful. I know the troops appreciate it. Anything else? Any?
I just said thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have a couple of bids. I guess I'll have the motion for bid 1225 read first.
Move that bid 2012-25 for Sycamore Parallel Groove Connectors be awarded to Wesco Distribution for $63,372 as the lowest qualified and responsive bidder on the recommendation of the general manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Kevin?
This invitation to bid was mailed out to 12 possible bidders. 3 bids were returned to the RMLD. Just going through bids themselves, UPSC, which stands for Utility Power Supply Company, sent in an alternate, an alternate that is to Sycamore, the Sycamore connectors. There are no alternates accepted for that. And so you can see Wesco has the lowest bid on this, just by virtue of the way they're placed here on the bid sheet. That's all I have.
Any questions on this bid? All in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. I'll entertain a motion on the 12-23 bids, please.
Move that bid 2012-23 for outdoor pole-mounted solid dielectric auto recloser be awarded to Wesco for $70,240 as the lowest qualified and responsive bidder on the recommendation of the general manager.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second.
This bid was sent out to 11 prospective bidders. 4 replied to the RMLD. Flipping the page over to the bid sheet, we had Wesco, again, Utility Power Supply Company, Power Sales Group, Cooper respond. 3 of these bidders were deemed non-responsive for various reasons. They all had exceptions. So far as Power Sales Group, they had FOB Factory, which is not acceptable to the RMLD. Cooper did not give any tax certifications nor any non-collusion certifications. They were deemed non-responsive. And so far as Utility Power Supply Company, their bidder information and bid security was submitted not only by them but also by Schneider Electric. They each did half the bid. According to the bid laws, the entity legally capable of an agreement to furnish goods or supplies must submit all of the documentation. They were deemed non-responsive.
Okay. Questions? All in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. Okay, thank you, Kevin. It's a late hour, but general discussion.
Just one quick item, Mr. Chairman. We received quite a few letters and emails last. I would request that those become part of the record of this meeting. I know they're public record anyway, but it would help to have them just attached to the minutes of this meeting.
Any objection to that? That's kind of unusual, isn't it?
I object to that.
I'm not sure I got them all, so I don't know that they could be part of the minutes.
Right.
Well, okay, I mean, I think they should be made available to anybody, the public, in case anybody, it's a public record anyway.
Well, if we...
They're mostly in the newspaper.
I guess if I mean, I suppose we could ask Jean to assemble all the ones that she knows of and help with the general manager and then post them on the website as one PDF. But I'm not sure I think...
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that.
I really don't want to attach them to the
I have no
minutes.
problem with that, Mr. Chairman.
We didn't discuss them here, and so if that's okay with everybody.
I'm fine with that.
All right. Okay, board material, the rate comparisons, and email to the accounts payable payroll questions. Our next meetings are February 29th, March 28th. We have a meeting of General Managers Committee on February 9th. That's the Thursday.
February when?
February 9th. I believe that's at 7? I think it's 7, but anyway, we checked the posting to make sure. Is it 7? Okay.
I requested 7:30.
Oh, that's right, that's right. You have to work for a living.
It's difficult. If you don't.
Okay, and then we do have a set of minutes from the executive session. I think we've tried something new here. If there's no comments on the minutes, and we don't go into executive session, we approve them in regular session. So I will ask, are there any comments on the minutes of the December 7th executive session? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve executive session meeting minutes of December 7th, 2011.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. I guess we're at a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bang.
Thank you all.